Yo, what up? How's everyone doing? Welcome to the thing, Real Time Live, Convex founder, AMA. Hi,
Hello.
Jamie. How you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
All right, man. It's cold in here. It's real
Is that
cold.
right?
Yeah.
It feels like
Uh,
we're always battling some kind of climate control issue in the office.
yeah. Or maybe I'm a big baby. Maybe I should just.
Or it could be both, you know.
Yeah, it's probably both. Um, cool. I'm guessing this is the last stream of the year.
Yeah, I think it is.
I haven't checked my calendar, so maybe there's one. I'm going to be in Australia towards the end of the year, so yeah, it's the last stream from the United States
We
of the
have to
year.
make this one count. I see people, yeah, throwing in. Yeah, where's everyone joining from? Yeah, I'd
Throwing
love
up
to
their
hear. Keep
locations.
doing it. Say where in the world you are. So,
That's
um,
cool.
California, that's an exotic place to be.
Yeah,
That's
I
where
heard
we
that.
are.
I heard they have tech companies there. Yeah.
They've got a few.
All right. So probably a lot of folks here have been on the stream before. So it's like a AMA where we try to answer any question you ask within reason. Keep it polite, but we'll try to do our best. We always run out of time, right? So at the end, I'm going to skip some questions, and that's not because I'm intentionally skipping your question. So if you got something you want to ask, get it out now, and then we'll get to it. There are some pre-submitted questions, like Wayne often posts this kind of pre-submit thing, and so I will just go through a few of these questions and get us started. Now, I've got a feeling the submission form might not be the most secure. Or 509 people really wanted an answer to this question. But the first question is, do you crinkle or fold your toilet paper?
This
Uh,
feels like a test in radical transparency, right? Like just out of the gate, right? This is like the trust fall of the AMA, right? So
I
I'll go
switched
first.
once.
Did
Yep.
you?
Yeah.
Wow. I don't want to ask anymore because I don't think I want any clarifying information, right? Like I think it's this kind of answer. Where do you currently stand on this? Where's your current point of view?
Um, so I was quite poor for quite a long time.
Is that a folder?
Yeah,
Is a
and when
full?
you're quite poor, you think about these things. And I'm a fold. I can't shake it. I just feel the crinklers are just got too much money.
Yeah. When I was a
Yeah.
younger, less disciplined man, I was a crinkler, and now I'm a folder. So there you go. Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
All right. Wow.
Efficiency comes for us all. We all get.
Well.
Yeah.
Okay. What's new since the last AMA? There's also a question there. Most things
Yeah.
been, unfortunately, again, we want to be transparent in these things, right? I wish we shipped more stuff that looked cool externally. Now, we did ship a lot of auth things. We did ship like
The big ones. We
component
shipped the
authoring,
component SDK.
which is
Yeah.
massive. Yeah, component
Yeah.
authoring was huge. We did the client side API changes Nicola worked on. A lot of the stuff we've been doing has been internal because we've been growing. And so there's been a lot of scale. There's been the business plan we've been working on pretty heavily, and I'll talk about EU in a second. But anything else you want to add, Jamie?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's we've done a lot more work with TanStack Start because it's gotten closer to GA. But you mentioned a lot of the other bigger things we've been focused on. We've done more work with improving. You said auth, yeah, like the Work OS integration. A lot of work on better auth. So I think you covered it pretty well.
Yep. Yep. So I am going to jump back and forth with like this because there's the questions website, but you all can just ask them live. So let's jump on. Let's just do the question that everyone asks every time, which is about EU.
Yeah.
EU. So I can tell you exactly what's happening, right? Last night, I reviewed some Terraform configs in a PR to deploy servers in Europe. But we're doing it in US West 1, EU West 1, Europe West 1, whatever it's called. So that will be not Frankfurt after all. I think it's Stockholm.
Dublin.
No, Dublin.
Yeah.
I should know this. The first one will be in Dublin because it's cheaper. That's the real reason. But once we have terraformed everything, which we're doing right now, it's just a click a button to deploy this stuff. So the blocker for the hardest work is actually the business plan, not the EU stuff. The EU stuff will happen pretty fast. It's like being actively coded. Like I said, we're deploying instances there right now. I can talk a little bit about architecturally how that works in a second, but maybe I'll switch to you, Jamie, to talk about the business plan because I think it's relevant.
Yeah. There's a. This is going to sound a little like, I don't know. It's not the sort of truly differentiated, exciting features that Convex originally built. But like a fair amount of the effort we're doing right now is that the company's matured and we have a lot more bigger customers. And so we're kind of having to repackage the way our APIs work. Like a lot of people have probably seen us investing a lot more in our management API, which is the API used to provision instances. And, these workflows we have for like when you're starting a project and you're a small team works pretty well for most teams out of the gate. But as bigger companies kind of onboard onto Convex, they want to have really customized workflows like staging deployments or many different prod deployments where they're doing a B2B motion, reselling different customers. And so they really want us to give more of the keys to them to say, let me provision, the Convex deployments that make sense for my business. And so a lot of the effort we've been doing there has been around that. But I will say it's related to all these other things people want too, right? Because then you start getting down to like, we know that like, EU West 1 will not be the last extra region we open, right? So now you start to think a little more about that meta layer, right? You're like, what are the APIs for specifying what region you want it to move in? And one day when we have APIs able to migrate things between regions, how will those APIs look? So a lot of our thinking is around that, kind of preparing to be able to do a ton of this stuff in 2026, not just the first EU regions, but like a whole bunch of other regions, and then having a lot of different sized instance types, like really, really large deployments that can handle a lot of traffic. So we're doing a lot of prep work for all that. And it may not feel like it's related to the EU stuff, but it actually is. I think in terms of like giving you something that people can spin up and provision, yeah, if it probably wasn't for the holidays here at the end of the year, it's possible we'd actually have it shipped in the next couple of weeks. But it might, who knows? It might actually be early January by the time the APIs are available to. I don't know. Maybe the team will pull it off in the next N days, but you probably know more about that than I do, James.
Yeah, so I want to talk about EU and why you would want it, because you might want it for maybe 3 reasons. One is like data safety, one is latency, and one might be reliability, but I think that'd be a bit misguided. So data safety is the main thing we're targeting. Now, that's not me saying your data is not safe in the United States. I certainly think it is. But there are people and there's companies who don't trust the United States, or they can't legally trust the United States for whatever reason. Like their customers can only have their data stay in Europe. And that's why we're doing it. Why are we targeting Europe first and not, say, we've had customers ask for Canada, we've had folks ask for Australia? It's because this sentiment is a more European sentiment. Let's be honest about it, right? So the folks who don't particularly want their users' data in the United States are primarily folks in Europe, and so that's why we're doing it, because we have a big, growing vocal backlog of customers who are like, I really need my data in Europe. So that architecture, that's how we're targeting that. Now, will it make latency lower for folks in Europe? Sure, but latency is a different question. If you want lower latency, then we can solve that in different ways, right? I think the right way to solve latency is to have edge proxies and have data much closer to where you are. So, for example, we also signed a contract with Cloudflare this week.
Yeah.
It's all blurring together. I think we signed a contract with Cloudflare this week. I'm sorry, it's been such a time. It might have been last week. So we are going to be proxying all traffic through edge servers around the world for our users. There have been people who've been complaining about slow convex performance when they've been on bad networks, I guess. It's particularly folks, say, in like Indonesia, places where connectivity isn't great. And so I feel like I might be talking too long here, but hopefully this is technically interesting to you. So there's a lot of factors that contribute towards latency. And when you want on an interactive service, a big part of latency is the initiation of the connection. So you have to do an SSL handshake, TLS handshake, which is several round trips, could be almost two and a half round trips, Jamie. And that can be from your computer in Australia to US East. So that's a couple hundred milliseconds. So you could take almost, let's say, half a second just for the handshake. Then you have to ramp up your TCP window size. And so the way networks work is you don't just slam all the data on the network first. You slowly ramp up the amount of data you transfer, wait for access. We can talk about TCP for hours, but basically the short answer is it takes time to ramp up a connection. And so even though putting an edge termination doesn't actually move the data any closer to the user, the data might be living in US East, it makes the experience much, much faster because you're doing SSL termination with a server really close to you. So that could happen in 10 milliseconds, right? And then the backhaul of traffic is going over a network that is already ramped up in window size, right? So you basically start the connection straight away, and then you slam your data on the network, and that is a much bigger impact on latency in the real world for most folks. So for there's more we want to do around latency. We want to put subscription servers close to the users too. So your subscription's kind of refreshed and cached locally, etc. Anyway, long story. But if you care about latency, please tell us that what you care about is latency, because that's a separate project we're working on. But if you care about data residency because of privacy reasons, that's what the EU project's about. And we're parameterizing it so it should be really easy to have other regions too. But just don't want to conflate those two.
I was gonna say, for just to piggyback on what James said, for some customers with massive scale, we've already switched them onto Cloudflare's network, and the difference can be pretty dramatic. Not only for the reasons James said with like TCP window sizes and like negotiating TLS with a server closer to you, but the other thing we've learned is whenever someone said like, "This is sucking, you guys, I'm upset," and we go, "Understood. Can you send us like a trace route or something?" Right. The thing we've discovered is in some parts of the world, if you're reliant on the public internet to route your traffic to US East's edge, like some of you may have heard of like BGP and stuff like that, which is like kind of how the global internet like decides what are all the routes to all the places. Like there are times of the day or whatever when some providers in some parts of the world go really roundabout routes. They suddenly like make the traffic way worse, maybe for reasons of like maintenance or saving money, or I don't know why. But the thing that's very cool about when you use a provider like Cloudflare is Cloudflare has their infrastructure almost everywhere. And then so that basically means that like your data runs over their backplane, like their fiber for the, that they've reserved globally to get to US East, and so you have very predictable, high performance kind of latency. So it's not only that window size; it's just sometimes like you'd be surprised if you run like a trace route that your data will hop like all over the world before it makes it to US East if it starts in the wrong place at the wrong time. And we're like, oh, who knew? I mean, it makes sense, I guess, but like, so that's another thing that kind of the Cloudflare, the partnering with these big networks solves is really consistent, high performance traffic routing.
Yep. And just because we like to be like so transparent, right? I've signed that contract to kick in on the 12th of January, which means we're paying for it from the 12th of January onwards. So we hope to launch it pretty soon around then.
And but also to call out, like Cloudflare's actually been an awesome partner so far. So like, we're really impressed with them.
I want to address this question here because it says, how much do you guys depend on Cloudflare? And I'm pretty sure there's like a hidden concern here, right? Because Cloudflare has been having some reliability issues recently, and they've been pretty widely publicized. Now, we don't depend on Cloudflare much. While we use Cloudflare for the net, we will be for the network and network termination. We don't use R2 internally. We don't use Cloudflare's compute internally. But Cloudflare, despite optics very recently, has had an extraordinarily reliable network. And so the idea here is that by using Cloudflare's edge termination, we should give much better performance for our users. If there was a problem and it was down, we could just turn it off and traffic would go over the public internet and everything would slow down a little bit. But yeah, this is not like pinning our destiny to Cloudflare, but I think it's easy to have like a short memory and be like, oh, Cloudflare's unreliable because there's been a few issues recently, but they're a very technical, reliable kind of company. There was a question here about privacy. Here we go, which is related. Been collecting data from users is kind of sensitive. How do I ensure the data is safe and know the person but Convex sees it? Well, we can do one. Well, Convex does not see your data. So Convex already has what GDPR and HIPAA and SOC 2, Type 1, Type 2. You can put sensitive medical records in Convex. No employee sees your data.
Right.
So that's taken care of. Right? There's another question here: how to prevent your employees seeing the data? Maybe.
Yeah. So like, there's a lot more habits related to that business plan thing we said before. Is like a lot of the bigger customers that have been using Convex and are ramping up a lot more in 2026 on Convex are in kind of healthcare and telemedicine, stuff like that, right? Health tech. So we have a lot of things coming out here. One is that like we will be rolling out a more granular permissions model for things like the dashboard and stuff like that, in terms of like what groups, especially if you're using single sign-on, like what groups in your organization are allowed to do certain things and stuff like that. So at least that dimension of it is there. I think there's a second thing which is also related to something I'm doing for the business plan, which is if you look at our terms of service right now, like Convex lists a number of sub processors, and like I think it's ended up we've done that in a way that was too like
Too
open
careful.
in a way.
Yeah,
It was
yeah,
too
yeah.
careful. Those sub processors we only use them for product analytics. We don't send your data to them, right? So the truth is your database data does not live anywhere except for AWS. It never leaves AWS, right? So no other vendor processes your data for us for any purpose. Unless you send it to them in an action using fetch or whatever. Like we
Or
do not,
stream it to 5.5 or something.
or stream
That's
it to
only you. Yeah,
Fivetran.
yeah.
Yeah. So your data. So the simple answer to your question is this should be true today. But if you have specific concerns about this, I guess find me on Discord and DM me or whatever. But
Yeah.
yeah,
No, there's a feature we're missing here because we do have customers that. So we already have. We're not missing anything on the privacy side, on the Convex side. But if you're a Convex developer, you have a team of developers. They can go to the dashboard and see data in the dashboard, right? So you might be concerned about your own employees seeing your customers' data, which is a legitimate concern. We don't currently have support for that, but we get
no,
requested this all the time. So what we want to do is have like hidden fields in the dashboard or like fine grained permissions so that your developers can't see prod data. We just haven't built it yet, but that's a needed feature. Yeah. Right now you have to trust your own employees.
right.
By the way,
There's only one very like coarse distinction, which is admin versus non-admin, and it's not granular enough to encompass what people with PHI would like to specify about permissions with their employees.
yeah. Thanks, Axel. We appreciate you too.
Thank you.
Yeah. There was a question up here about open source. I'm gonna put you on the spot, Jamie.
Okay.
So firstly, if the code base is
Oh.
already open source and we're transparent, why sync from Convex backend from internal development? Yeah.
Well, I think that there's at least a few. There's like a few reasons for that, and I'll list all of them.
Can you give
or
the
at least
context, by the way,
biggest
Jamie?
one.
Can you explain what this
Yeah.
question means?
So Convex has a lot of repositories. internally, Convex is actually a mono repo, right? So like our main repo is a mono repo that has a lot of stuff in it, a lot of stuff, right? And not even all that stuff would be very interesting probably to you all, right? So the question is like, if we're so open source oriented, right, nominally or actually, which I think actually we're trying to get more and more all the time, why don't you guys just open source that whole thing? Why do you guys have this like capybara kind of thing where we're taking a subset out? I think the biggest reason is that like so again, enumerating all the reasons. One is we would have to do a bit of an exercise to just be like, hey, is there stuff in here we're like legally we shouldn't do? I don't think there's too much stuff like that, but it would take time to do it. But I think the biggest reason actually is like we decided open source actually has to be useful. And if the amount of sophistication is needed to actually get any utility out of our monorepo, like is really high and depends on a lot of internal context knowledge that's in our notion and is really ugly. And the processes are not like ergonomic, right? They're more an artifact of the complex of business we're running internally. So I think there's a buried question in the question, which is like, why don't we have the scale up convex, right? Like backend, right? Why can't Convex open source do everything Convex Cloud can do? In some respects, we would like it to, and we might invest in that in the future. But the reason why we haven't done that yet is because we probably would put some work in to making it possible to run it for everyone else. Like to make that more concrete, internally, Convex uses Nomad and the HashiCorp stack, and we have our own proprietary telemetry monitoring system that's very quirky for us. And like this is not like if you have a Kubernetes cluster, you just type a command and you're off and running, right? So it would not be very useful actually to. So one of the biggest reasons why we do clone out that Convex backend is we clean things up a lot to be able to make that actually useful for you all, and not to have a bunch of noise in there that has nothing to do with anyone's cloud infrastructure but ours. I think we do want to open source more of the useful parts about Convex in the future, like some scale up stuff. But that's also just going to take a little bit of work because I think as part of that translation process, we want to make it shaped to use standard tooling and standard telemetry so that it's more reasonable for you all. So that's I guess, the long answer to that
Yeah.
question.
So some more info on how development works internally. So when we're putting up PRs, we're putting up PRs on a repo called Convex, not Convex backend. That's the mono repo. And in the description section, we auto put two sections in there, and one says this goes to the open source repo, and one says write any private stuff in here if you don't want to go to open source repo. Right. So we do have like retain the ability to have like internal Convex discussions in that. Now, the PRs get synced automatically. So it's not like we're manually going and like pushing them like on a slow delay. They do automatically get synced to the external repo. But I don't know, this was my choice. Maybe it was the wrong choice. But I kind of wanted developers here to be able to like debate and chat and say, hey guys, did we fuck up? And like say all these things kind of like privately without wondering about what people think about them.
Yeah,
And maybe make a mistake and not be embarrassed. Like I didn't want people to have that scrutiny of the public watching them build, but also have the transparency that as soon as something's being accepted, that it gets pushed externally.
also too, because I do also want to say that like that part of how we're doing it, I don't think we've done wrong. I think we're still doing the right way because sometimes those conversations involve stuff like we're fixing this because customer X ran into a thing. And some of that information is actually contractually private, where with that customer, we're like, some of what we work on is based on engagements with, and we don't really have permission to make all of those things public from all of our customers. So, and what I wouldn't want to do is ask every single employee to be constantly vigilant about understanding, like, you can say these things and not these other things. So I think by making that safe space, it just makes it a little easier for our business to move forward, but for us to put as much as possible just in the open source section.
Yep.
So anyway, long answer, but like we do want to open source more. We're not trying to like give you less functionality, but when we give you functionality, it has to actually be useful, and that actually takes work to do. Because we have our own culture, right? So if your job was build a startup as fast as possible, which is what our job was, you're going to use all the techniques and tools that you know best, and that may not match what every developer in the public internet is most familiar with. In fact, it doesn't for almost any company. So
Now, Jamie, I haven't discussed this with you, but yesterday, Nipun, who's one of our engineers, kind of convinced me that we should open source FunRun. FunRun is the scale out kind of execution cluster.
mhm,
Yeah, I think we should. I mean, he was like this is valuable to folk, whatever.
mhm.
I'm convinced that we should open source it, but we just don't have time right now. So
Yeah.
there's no official policy to hide this stuff.
No,
It's just we
it's a
haven't
matter
done
of
it.
time. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's just to say our favorite refrain. A lot of this is just a matter of time. We're hiring, so if you want to come, if you want more open source sooner, jobs at convex.dev.
yep,
Like we just need more people to get this stuff
yep.
out.
Ben, please put up PRs, and yeah, we would actually merge it in for you. There
Every
might be some bidirectional thing that we set up with
I,
Capybara.
I think we've got some stuff that makes it easy to do it. So that's kind of our, that should be our problem, not your problem. It should
Yeah,
feel pretty ergonomic to make a PR. That on Twitter, some people might have seen. I kind of like built a version of Convex on top of TiKV, which is like a different distributed database. And honestly, the way I did that is I just cloned the public repo and started working. So my diff is not on the internal mono repo. My diff is just on, and that's because I wanted to feel what the collaboration process feels like for folks that don't work at Convex. So.
yep. There's not a big lag between these repos. It's like it's minutes. So yeah, you can also click the wrong one. I want to come to this, but at first, there's been bump and OLAP. We have to respond because there's been a lot of questions. We haven't done anything on it since last AMA. That's the
Yeah,
truth.
I would love to get the first version of it out in Q1 of next year. I think it's that important. But same thing about more people. Like the folks that would really do that work, a lot of them are focused on business plan, scale up right now, EU region, right? So once we get the region stuff done and this, like, because for folks that don't know, our team is like 12 or 13 engineers, right? We're still a pretty small team. So, but OLAP is extremely high priority. It's just we did listen to you all, and EU hosting was more important than OLAP. We're more urgent. So I think James and I would like OLAP even more than we would like EU hosting. But
Yeah, if
us
I was
us
doing it for myself,
prioritizing,
yeah,
yeah, we're just
I was.
listening to the customers and like we know how important region data placement is.
Yeah,
So that's why we
I
did that first.
yeah, I think OLAP is the biggest gap in Convex right now.
Me too. Yeah.
More so than local first, more so than EU.
Yep.
They're all important, but that's my thoughts. So we are aligned. And there's questions about what do you do in the meantime? You use Fivetran and you stream it to some other system, and that's the best answer we've got for you right now. Unfortunately, yeah. Paul asking a pretty insightful question.
Yeah.
We can.
So this has
I'm
been
gonna
even in.
repeat the question, Jamie.
Yeah, go
What's
ahead. Go ahead. Yeah, repeat the
well,
question. I'll here. Let me
you
say it.
repeat. Yeah.
Components. Wondering why are components isolated? It adds latency and complexity. So why did you design it this way? Basically, components are an extremely long-term play at Convex, to be honest. And so we would like to actually optimize our infrastructure, and we've already been doing some of this work to the point where there's not really any appreciable like cost across components, or it's so cheap that, to be honest, when you guys talk to a database, it's going to take 4 milliseconds or whatever to talk to that database, 6 milliseconds or whatever. It's like, so the component boundary should be like a millisecond or two, or not appreciable, right? So and there's a lot of work we've already done and we'll do over the next year or two to kind of make that latency thing disappear. And so then I'll go back to then like, why is it isolated then for the other reasons like complexity or anything else? Well, so one of the things that we want to be able to do is create a really, really rich component directory over the next few years where you really are able to drop building blocks into your project. And some of our bigger customers already are engaged enough with this theory that they are strategically going this way. The idea should be that just like when you call OpenAI, you don't have to worry about OpenAI reading your users table. They only get whatever data you send to OpenAI. That's the relationship you have with the service. Like we want that same level of like confidence about using components, where if you pass it to the component in a function, you've given it to it, but that thing cannot get to your tables, and it also can't execute code in your applications. Runtime, basically, right? So that's the direction we're pushing in, because that's, I think you all are so familiar with all the supply chain attacks and npm and all this kind of stuff, where it's like, oh my gosh, I can't pull in dependencies because they're all liabilities, right? And as you all probably know, like the abstraction floor we all sit on is really high. The truth is we depend on millions of lines of code written by all kinds of people that kind of have to work, and we don't read all of them. And so for Convex to be able to really grow over the next 5 years, to be able to do this incredibly powerful high level building blocks thing, we have to keep, tenacious on top of components and get the latencies low enough so that eventually in the future you can have this confidence. You almost get like the benefit of this big service ecosystem, but all in the same transactional window and incredibly high performance, and without failing networks and lots of other great stuff.
Yep.
So that future is going to be very powerful when we get there. It will take probably another year or two to make the component runtime that seamless and the component API that seamless.
So one thing we're actively working on right now, Jeffrey, one of engineers, is doing as we speak, is changing. I mean, jailing is a very complex topic, but right now, when you call a component, right now we spin up a whole new JavaScript isolate, V8 isolate, for every cross-component call, which is quite expensive, because you could call a component 100 times in a single function, and we're spinning up 100 isolates. That'll be fixed very shortly. So we're reusing JavaScript V8 context, and we'll, for a certain class of component, reuse. So why is it expensive? Every time we spin up an isolate, we have to load all the modules, like load all the code that it needs. It's like almost like a cold start problem. We do a bunch of stuff to make it as fast as we can. What we'll be doing is, if you're calling into a separate kind of a separate component, and you have 100 calls within that component, we'll be reusing that JavaScript context. It gives effectively the same security properties, because any data the component has access to can be, the component has the ability to share between calls to that component. So the components will be isolated, but we're just changing how we do our isolation, and it'll be a bajillion times faster.
Yeah.
So
maybe
folks will only have like 2 isolates instead of 1,000 isolates.
Maybe one other thing I'll say, because folks might be like, I actually think some of the frustration of this, and I get it, is like the better off kind of thing, where like, hey, better off just changes your tables for you, and I just want access to those tables. Like, the issue with that is that there's all these standards in the limit that we're familiar with as projects evolve, where a table is not the right relationship with type checking and abstraction, generally speaking, right? Because like, let's just say I own I'm a new SaaS founder, and what I do is I build a payments company as a Convex component. You don't need to worry about how it works. Here's just an API, right? Let's say I add new features to my SaaS company as a Convex component, right? And that means I want to migrate my tables to have a new shape because I have new capabilities. That should not break your app that's reading tables. I should be free to evolve my independent system. And as long as my types are the same, right, which classically you'd say my HTTP API or my REST API, in this Convex world, it's as long as the TypeScript functions still type check, but I'm adding new ones or adding new arguments, right? Everybody's still happy. I don't break your code because I decide to evolve my own system, right? And so we already have a great way to encompass how do we evolve internal things, right? While not breaking the things that depend on them. And like programming languages are awesome at that, right? Functions are awesome at that. And that's why the function being the calling interface and not sharing tables, in the long run, sharing tables is too fragile. And when you're making better off and you need to work on Postgres and MySQL, I get it. You don't have Convex. So that's the way you got to do data sharing. In the long run, in Convex can do something much more powerful than that.
This is a discussion that happened 30, 50 years ago. I mean, about like abstraction and functions. Like, why should there be private variables in an object? Can't we just have shared memory? Why do we have to have locks? Can't I just touch the data? And sure, it is convenient to just be able to access anything, but Convex is designed for applications that grow and scale. And I really keep pushing on this. Scale is not just the number of customers you have. Scale is the number of developers you have on your team, or the number of features you add to your project.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's certain abstractions, certain models that scale well. We think components is a model that scales well because it has information hiding within it. Like you can just keep that data separate. You don't have to think about it or reason about it. Convex is transactional, right? And so these things are designed to really allow you to scale. There's a question like further down there, like sell me on Convex. Why compared to other platforms, right? Convex is designed to codify good architectural principles, right? It may seem very convenient for you to issue a SQL query from your client directly to your server. Why would you need a transaction? Just send the SQL query directly. That is very convenient for you on day one, right? But as your application grows, the ability to have actual functions running as RPCs on the server to execute as transactions that don't interfere with each other, can do multiple things in one statement, right? To have live reactivity so you don't have to poll, right? To have end-to-end consistency. These are the features that allow your application to grow successfully.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you haven't ever built a successful application, if you haven't ever built a product that has grown, if you haven't had more than a few people working on a project, maybe it can be sometimes hard to foresee the complexities that come with information hiding and lack of like good abstractions. Convex is designed to provide really clean guardrails for you, so you can move fast, but also move fast in ways that are architecturally sound.
Also, yeah, another thing, just for because I know there's a lot of folks early in their programming career on here, is that like you could say with modern tools and leverage now, many things that will be built will never like need a team of more than 5 or 10. That might be true in some circumstances, but I think the thing you'll find, especially when you have something that works and has a long lifetime, is your team is actually 30, right? The reason why your team is 30 is because there might only be 5 humans on the team, but you 3 years ago wrote that other thing and you no longer remember how it works. And effectively, that is another engineer that did that. And if there's not encapsulation, like I think many developers find you could kind of hold maybe 30,000 lines with true mastery, 60,000 lines, maybe 100, right? But pretty soon when you move on to other parts of the code base, you begin to forget. And it's akin to having more teammates, right? That are doing things you no longer remember the complexities of them. And if you can't wrap that thing up in a simpler, narrower interface so that you can limit the cognitive domain you have to master all the time, you're going to start to run into problems as your project gets bigger.
Yeah.
And Convex is all about going the distance with you, not just giving you something convenient in the first week. We want to give you something really fun and awesome in the first week, but we also want you to not feel like we lied to you a year in when all those practices don't work anymore. We want it to work even better as you grow.
And if you think AI means architecture doesn't matter anymore, I got some bad news for you. This matters so much more now than it did even a few years ago. Because again, like the ability to understand and architect your code and prevent emergent complexity matters even more now that there's more code being generated. Anyway, that's a rant we can save for another time. Jamie, do you want to address this
Yeah,
point from
so
Sarah?
this is correct, but there still are primitives and there are components, right? So, like, I'll just say something quick here because it could be too deep if we don't. File storage is actually not a primitive; it's a component, probably in retrospect, right? And triggers we made as a component or a library, but triggers is probably a primitive, right? And so we will be fixing these things over time. But one of the things that makes the system more robust and lets you all extend it the way you want is that Convex kind of stops building components as primitives because then you can't all change it or PR it as easily or fork it and make it the way you want. So you are correct. Not everything is a component, but the truth is there are a very few low level set of things that need to be incredibly high performance and very thoroughly thought through that are the primitives in Convex, and we do have to own those things. Most other things should be this kind of open ecosystem thing where we're all building components together.
Yeah, and not everything needs to be a component.
Mhm.
Yeah. Cool. I found it doesn't make sense to use Convex, too expensive. You can run it yourself for cheaper. So this comes up, some variation of this comes up every now and then. And it's good to pressure test it, right? So firstly, like if you can run Convex for cheaper, then go for it. But I just want to be transparent about our pricing, because how Convex works internally, right? So we run like a more sophisticated version of Convex than the open source one, because it's designed to be multi-tenant. So basically, we have these kind of clusters that share customer workloads and hardware to maximally utilize this hardware. So, for example, we have in the cloud version of Convex, we have a service called FunRun. FunRun is our function runner. This is a big scale-out cluster of nodes sitting there, running a whole bunch of isolates that are ready to kind of run customer workloads, and they multiplex, thousands of customers onto an individual node, right? So there's huge numbers of Convex projects running on a smaller set of hardware. So we get very large economies of scale out of this, right? It's kind of the whole Amazon argument about like AWS, efficiently utilizing servers. So we can multiplex everyone's workloads across a small amount of hardware to get more efficiency, and then we charge a profit margin on top of this. But it's not like a massive profit margin, right? It's not like we're not fleecing you, right? So it's curious that you can run it cheaper than us. And so I'd actually love more info. Like it could be that you're running on some hardware that's like underpriced. Like it could be that like you're running on your own computer. Well, that's free, right? It could be that you're running on some hardware that a infra provider is kind of selling you for below cost because they're trying to get you to like upgrade later on. It could be that Convex's billing model, our pricing model, doesn't fit you exactly, because we don't charge exactly for resource. Like we abstract these away and we charge for function calls and database bandwidth and stuff. But it shouldn't be possible to run Convex cheaper than us.
I mean,
I'm not saying it's not, but
empirically, I would say based on just conversation with customers, like if you want to spend $0 a month on Convex and you have a server you want to spend $2 a month on Convex, let's put it that way. Although now we have a starter plan and that scales to zero. That's pretty cheap.
Yep.
But if you've got a computer and your goal is to get as close to zero as possible, more power to you. Go ahead. Like it can be done, and like you'll be good. I think the thing I would caution, you could just really welcome to try it, is that once you really start to have adoption and you have to operate Convex and deal with it when it goes down, and you're paying people to do that, like all the companies that switched on to, and there's very few of them, the ones that switched on to self-hosted because they thought it would save money, pretty much all of them came back to the cloud product, because once you're scaling up, it is actually, Convex is quite reasonably priced in practice. So, but if it works for you, that's great. So when it comes to the question you're asking, which has this implication like for my app, I think unfortunately we'd have to know more about your specific app to understand why it's expensive to run on Convex.
I'll bring this up because I'll switch over. DHH, always telling people to not use cloud infra, right? I think the thing that's really missing there, right, is scale, right? Like if you have one server running that you bought yourself and you plugged into your Ethernet cable on your Comcast, you can do that. And if you get more users, you have to go buy another server, right? Jamie and I have literally done this job. Like this was like, we used to rack servers. Like we built like, actual, like we moved Dropbox off of AWS, off of S3 onto our own data centers. And then you need a supply chain team and a capacity planning team for almost anyone with a growing application, or an application where the workload shifts, like where you have spikes in load and lulls. It's almost definitely you can't run it yourself, but if you can, go for it. Like that's not like we're not mad if you do that. That's totally cool.
Right.
So take questions from the website too. Okay, good point. So let's go through the website real quick. When do you plan to launch EU data residency? I think we mentioned this, where Terraform PR was approved yesterday. So January probably.
Sometime in the next few weeks. I don't know, and some of it's related to holiday PTO and
Yeah.
complications like that, right? So
Yeah.
but it's coming soon. It's coming soon.
Yep. Guttum tells me that he wants it working before he goes on vacation.
That's
Um,
great. We don't want to put you on the spot, got him, but like that'd be
yeah,
awesome.
I don't know if you're watching Guttum. The world knows now. Um, Plan for keeping docs up to date.
um, yeah,
The diff
so
tan stack. Yeah,
the DX team is going to start taking more of this stuff on, and we would love to land someone on the team that's awesome at docs sometime in the next 6 months. Um, all these things are good ideas you all want, and we need people to take them all on. So um, I don't know if we have a better plan than that. I think there's actually some interesting ideas the DX teams talked about where like we can leverage LLMs a little bit more to check that things are working and at least highlight things that regress without waiting for you all to tell us about it. But that's a whole work stream, right? So it'll
yeah.
just we'll continually work on these things through 2026.
With the question, how can we build customer-facing analytics platform on Convex? It's difficult right now.
Yeah,
Now
I'm not
we
sure I would do it yet.
Yeah, just now
Yeah,
we have it. So if you go to the Convex dashboard, there's the insights page, right? There's analytics there. You can see like all the graphs and stuff. The way we built that, because the dashboard is built on Convex, but it's pulling that data from Databricks. So just in terms of how we do it internally, we have analytics data like metrics flowing to Databricks over Fivetran, just like we recommend for y'all to do. And then we fetch stuff from Databricks. If you wanted to do that right now, then yeah, I would do something very similar. Um, but Convex is not the best analytics platform. That's just the truth. Will we get local first? It's just going to be a slow burn.
yeah,
And we launched client side ID alloc. Have we launched client side? Yeah,
yeah. It's out.
we launched client side ID allocation. So it's getting much easier to do offline mode, and it's just gonna slowly get better. I think the answer is it's just gonna incrementally. There probably won't be a big, massive launch. It's just gonna be every month something a little bit better comes out, and it's gonna get less and less painful.
Yeah, I would just say again, like Robles in the channel has made an
Oh yes,
awesome
yes,
project called Convex Replicate. That's like massive amounts of work have been put into making a pretty polished local first thing and adding support for mobile and different backends and in-memory testing backend to write tests and CRDT based conflict resolution when you want it and a lot of clear docs about the trade-offs involved in consistency when you use these different things. So honestly, I'm going to put the pressure back on our ecosystem a little bit to be like, why don't you all go try that and then come to the local first channel on Discord and tell us and tell him what's missing, right? Because like we're starting to ship enough of the primitives that I think you can start to build something pretty good. And I think that project represents a really good first shot at it. So there's no need to always wait on us to do everything. We're going to keep making that better and better over time. But sometimes a really good developer of the ecosystem is going to race way ahead of us. And that is okay. There's nothing wrong with that.
what can you remind us the name of Rebels project?
It's called Convex Replicate. And
Comics Replicate.
maybe we can get a pasted, maybe Wayne, if you're there, you can paste a link to it in the chat so that people know where it
Yeah.
is.
If you want to get data into ClickHouse, Fivetran I think is the recommended way. You could, if you wanted to, depending on your use case, export your data as a CSV and import it to another system. You could have like a service running locally that uses the Convex CLI to pull your data and export it. But as of right now, the best bet you have to get something in ClickHouse would be Fivetran. I'm assuming there's a Fivetran ClickHouse integration.
Yeah,
Any
in fact, I would say I would go as far as to say if you're not a data warehouse expert, which most app developers aren't because they focus more on the application side, not like the data side. ClickHouse Cloud is probably the lightest weight way to get something pretty darn good. So, unless you're already coming in with like we're a Snowflake shop or like I've got GCP and BigQuery, or these are huge ecosystems that are very powerful, or Databricks, but just a ton to learn. I think the thing that most developers would like that just gets them what they want the fastest is ClickHouse Cloud. I would use that.
Yep. There's a question on guidance on maintaining an open source Convex component. I think it's the same as any open source guidance. It's a bit of work, right? Managing community is hard. You're going to have people sending you like useless LLM generated PRs that they put no effort into, and then you've got to spend time reading them. Community management is probably more work than you would think, but it's very, very rewarding because it feels good to be part of a community, and it's also great career-wise too to have a good open source presence. And so, but we do have that challenge, like the component challenge. You can Google like Convex component challenge, and getting started with that and submitting an open source component is a really good way to get started. Any more support for plugins for better authentication without local installations, such as organization and admin? I don't know what that means.
I mean, I to be honest, like I think Better Auth is a cool project, but like I won't be focusing that much attention on Better Auth plugins because all of the plugin architecture in Convex Energy is going to our own components. I do worry a little bit about Convex developers leveraging Better Auth plugins too much because they won't have a good compositional story with all the components get developed in the next 2 years with Convex. So that's the one of my and Sean knows this. He's done such a great job with Better Auth, but like Better Auth's kind of like they're building their own kind of almost baby version of Convex, and like Convex can do those things already, and we have our own extension architecture. And I do worry about some developers ending up in a world where they have half of their kind of application state machine in this Better Auth thing, and then half of it in Convex components. And there's a real issue with composing those two universes together in a way that doesn't feel very ergonomic. Again, going to those things that are more like a year down the road, you might suddenly be like, oh my gosh, like this is a mess. So because of that, yeah, I don't have a strong opinion about Better Auth plugins. It seems cool. Dive in, use at your own risk. I would say probably try not to use if you're using Convex.
Mark says, how do we prioritize features the team works on? Next, kind of my job, and Jamie's my boss, so it's Jamie sometimes tells me what to do.
One thing I will say, because I know that question had like, will you all the voting thing is the most I can say is that Mickey on our team is working on something pretty cool to just better get a heartbeat of like what's important to everyone. I don't want to spoil it, so because I know Mickey will probably do some great content around it, but like stay tuned in the next few weeks because we are launching something to be able to solicit feedback and to let you all weigh in on what matters to you in a way that's higher bandwidth than like the team members always being like, what do you all want next? And we're never sure if we're talking to enough people quickly enough to know what matters to everyone.
Coming soon. But the short answer, we spend a lot of time talking to you all. And also, I would say my philosophy is not the customer's always right. The customer's right about their problems, and then we're responsible for solving those problems. So sometimes people come with us like, hey, I need this feature. And we say, well, how about we build this thing for you instead? And someone say like, wow, I never would have thought of that. That's a much better solution. So the Convex is not like, we don't just crowdsource ideas and like outsource creativity and stuff. It's our job to be ahead of users' needs. But the more info we get from you all about what your needs are, the better we can make good decisions. Is there an open source production ready app using Convex to learn from? It's a good question, Jamie.
I think there are. We could follow. I mean, there's now. Production ready. Production ready is a continuum. It's not a binary. Ready for what? Honestly, I know that's a cop out answer, but the truth of it is that works really well and scales to your first 10,000 daily active users is very different than would it work for 5 million, right? So, but yeah, there's some apps that are done quite well with the right kind of architectural practices. I actually think some of the projects that Antonio has done historically built in Convex are really good examples of solid Convex projects that would work to host and would have reasonable economics to run them, and you could definitely get to your first tens of thousands of daily active users on apps like that. Check out Code with Antonio's channel and check out his repositories of like tutorial projects he's done, which are pretty non-trivial.
Yeah. And last question from the website, and then I'll jump back here because there's a lot of questions here. Siggy was asking, is it possible to do some kind of multi-tenancy thing where every customer has their own deployment? Yeah, yes. Absolutely it is. We have customers with over 100,000 deployments, which might be shocking to you. Because they're a vibe coding platform, for example. And we have customers who are splitting up, like they're sharding their application because they have separate customers and they're going to grow independently. You do not have to have one Convex project for everything. And we're as of right now, we're adding tooling to make it easier to manage large numbers of projects.
That's yeah, especially for the business plan we've been talking about. Yeah, the business plan is going to have more and more powerful features for being able to like have us manage multi-tenancy for you and to be able to put customers into different deployments or whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
Is Convex enterprise ready? So yeah, I mean, yes, but it's about to get a lot better in
More
February or so. Yeah. And again, it depends on what you mean by enterprise. If you mean, can you run at scale production workloads on Convex? Yes, you really can. There's some companies with quite a lot of traffic that are very, very happy Convex customers. I think enterprise ready often means how complex the organization is that's interfacing with us. And that I would say almost, because we've learned a lot more about that in the last couple months. So there's lots of stuff around contracts and SLAs and support policies and ACLs on who can access what permissions, and that stuff is going to be really good in maybe like February.
That's what we're spending a lot of our time on right now,
That's
frankly.
what
People
we're.
are like,
That's
what are we
what's taking a
doing?
lot of time. Yeah,
That's what we're doing because we're just
getting
getting so many bigger customers come and showing up and they have all these needs around ACLs and
yeah,
billing and things. Yep.
yeah. So getting enterprise ready is kind of the focus that we're doing right now.
You want to send OTel
Yeah,
logs? Okay, so yes, you can manually log stuff. So firstly, we wanted to add native OTel support because we should. Why should you have to build this, right? We should just do it for you. We haven't done it yet. Right now we have obviously folks you probably know that we have the Sentry integration, we have Axiom integration, we have these various integrations. But logging can get expensive. Logging can be large amounts of data. Hard to know exactly what to say without knowing your specific use case and how much traffic you have, apart from saying that we should add this for you.
yeah. There's enough folks that all want OTel support that, like, honestly, the thing you're doing, a number of people have had to do. We don't love the fact you'd have to do it. We would like to build in OTel support working more natively, and so we probably will in the next month or two. No cross-component database access. Yeah, if you need to share data between, we have some proposals for like what would it mean to expose an interface that codifies a subset of a table as a. None of that's shipped yet. So in general, if components need data from each other, use functions to pass the data or ask for the data. That's how you do it.
Yep. Is there a way to copy data from prod to staging with a cron? Yeah, you should be careful with this. So we don't have any kind of first class support for moving data between deployments. You can do a snapshot export and in the dashboard, and then you can load that into a new deployment. Some people do that. You can also use the CLI to export data as a CSV or something and import it to a new deployment or to an existing staging deployment. It's possible. It requires it requires you to set it up yourself. You probably want some service outside of Convex to run this for you. I guess you could have like one project that just calls these commands and stuff, but probably you just want a script running locally on your computer or something. Just be careful. I mean, I don't want to be patronizing about it, but yeah, some folks are like just exporting data out of prod can be tricky. You certainly don't want to blow away your prod data. You don't want to leak state out of prod if it's privacy centric.
Yeah. We are adding some more APIs around like downloading and managing snapshots because like app builders and vibe coding platforms need them, but they're not there yet. Yeah, but James's solution will work for now.
Should we be using actions to call Databricks? I forget. You can look at the database source code. It's open source. I think we're live calling Databricks from the dashboard.
Oh, this is on the Convex side?
On the Convex dashboard.
Oh yeah. No, I think we're yeah, I think it's I don't think it's a Convex project. So this has to do with the system we call Big Brain internally, again, coming down to that stuff that's in the mono repo that none of you would care about, which is our account management system and provisioning system and billing and all this. Right now, that's a monolith written in Rust because it was like the first system we wrote, all right, to the team would love to break this up and write pieces of it in Convex and to turn it into several different services. But at the moment, I think that big Rust thing is just using SQL to call out to Databricks and then sending the results back down. So there's no convex action involved in um, that particular dashboard.
Yep, cool. I'm just gonna. We're out of time, so I'm just gonna catch up with a couple of them. When I use Convex to get stuck loading, shouldn't. It's probably on you. Maybe you have some strange use effect thing going on your client code. If you think there's a bug, please let us know on Discord. But I haven't heard of this happening before, so
Yeah,
it's
or if
probably
you're a
on you.
pro customer, make a ticket and get it in the queue so we can
Yep.
check it out. But
Are there
probably not.
plans to offer vanilla Postgres and MySQL? No, but I think we can maybe solve your needs in other ways. So when we add OLAP support, so for running analytics queries, I would like to give you SQL access. So basically, it wouldn't be like reactive and it wouldn't have all the fancy Convex live subscription stuff, but we could just allow you to run SQL queries over that data. And I think that
At
probably
least
solve
select queries. At least select queries, right?
select
Like
queries.
the
Yes.
thing I want to worry about with this person is maybe what they're kind of asking is, I've got a couple things where I just want to do regular old SQL insert update, select. We probably would never offer posting of those databases. Like there are just a lot of providers that specialize in that. Like use PlanetScale, honestly. So, yeah, if that's really if you just want to be able to write SQL against your convex tables, yes, as James said, that's the kind of OLAP analytics support. If you really just want us to host, to be a good quality Postgres host, all we'd be doing is reselling you PlanetScale. You should just sign up for PlanetScale. So,
Yep. There's a couple here. Okay, apologies by the way if we missed your question. It gets a little bit, there's a bit of an inundation of questions we missed. Don't let the database bandwidth cost and the way listeners send all data back down the wire. That is the way it works. So right now, every time a subscription refreshes, it sends the new state to you over the wire. Now, one, if you don't want your app refreshing all the time, you don't have to be. Jamie has an article on how to have a non-reactive application. Two, we'll add differential updates sometime. So to cut down on the amount of data going over the wire. So yep, but there's a lot of caching and stuff going on. So we're not like it's probably more efficient than you think. The last one, Jamie, Sarah says gave me Silicon Valley series vibes. That I don't know what this is in reference to, but we were involved in the show. I don't know if people know this story.
yeah, it was pretty cool because like Mike Judge, the creator of Silicon Valley, for the folks that don't know, like Mike made Beavis and Butthead back in the day, King of the Hill. Mike also made Office Space, the movie, and so it was pretty cool to get to work with Mike. And Mike came and talked to a bunch of us with his writing team at Dropbox, and they pulled together a small group of people that had a bunch of startup stories, and so it was pretty fun to be able to like collaborate with. James even got his name in the credits to Silicon Valley.
I am
Yeah,
in the credits to Silicon Valley.
as a technical advisor and technical consultant or something. So, but I will
Yeah.
say that like if you go start a startup in Silicon Valley, don't start watching that show shortly after you do it because it just hits too close to home. Like it's so on that you're like, when I leave work, I want to not think about work, and like that show will be like, oh my gosh, this is too real.
Yeah.
So
The reason it's hard to watch Silicon Valley is those stories are most of them, way more than half of the story in Silicon Valley are actual real stories, believe it or not. Like there's just like stuff that happened at Dropbox and Google and PayPal and everything that they just have been anonymized. There was a lot of technical consultants on that show. Sarah was talking about the servers plugged under the desk. That was me. That was actually a part of the story. I contributed towards Silicon Valley, if you can believe that. I think there was like unplugging the server to plug in a washing machine or something. I can't remember, but yeah, there was a lot of, back when that show was made, they spent so much effort on technical accuracy. Like they were like, we'd be like, oh, it doesn't matter, that's close enough. Like, no, we want all this stuff to be accurate. So they spent a lot of time with engineers in Silicon Valley, and that's where a lot of stories came from. And if you spend enough time in startups, you start to really believe, like, you'd be like, this investor can't be that disgusting. And yeah, they can.
VCs aren't that weird, yeah. And then you're like, oh yeah, VCs
This
can be
person
that
can't
weird.
be that horrendous. Like, nah, they can be.
Yeah, yeah.
So
You've met every one of these people several times, so
So
which
yeah,
makes
if you haven't spent much time in Silicon Valley, watch the TV show Silicon Valley sometime. That's it. That's real life. That was at least real life at the time it came out. Awesome. Well, I think that's us. We hit our time. It's been great having y'all on the stream. It's been great having y'all part of the Convex community. And yeah, and also particularly love when you come with like hard questions. Hopefully we don't give too evasive answers. We want to give genuine answers, especially stuff about pricing and stuff. Like, if you can do it cheaper, then go for it. But just the reality is we are trying to make this the cheapest possible way to build a scalable application. That's our goal. Cool. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.